In the heart of Africa, nestled among 1,000 hills, lies Rwanda, a country of stunning beauty and profound tragedy. Today, it stands as a testament to resilience, but its past holds a dark and complex story. To understand Rwanda, we must look back, beyond the headlines, to a time before the world's gaze turned upon it, and trace the path that led to the unimaginable. This is the story of Rwanda, its people, its pain, and its long journey toward healing. Before the arrival of Europeans, Rwanda was a kingdom with a sophisticated social structure. The people shared a common language, Kinyarwanda, and a common culture. The terms Hutu, Tutsi, and TWA existed, but they were more like social or occupational classes than rigid ethnic groups. A Hutu who acquired cattle could, over time, become a Tutsi. A Tutsi who lost wealth could become a Hutu. Identities were fluid, and intermarriage was common. The society was hierarchical, with a Tutsi king, the Mwami, at the top, but the lines between groups were not set in stone. It was a complex web of relationships, bound by a shared land and heritage. This was the Rwanda that existed for centuries, a nation united under one king and one culture. Everything changed with the arrival of Europeans at the end of the 19th century. First Germany, then after World War I, Belgium took control. The colonial powers, obsessed with classification, brought with them a destructive and simplistic view of race. Armed with pseudoscientific theories, they began to measure noses and skulls, declaring the Tutsi to be a superior, Hamitic race, supposedly of Ethiopian origin, destined to rule over the Bantu Hutu. This was a complete fabrication, but it had devastating consequences. The Belgians institutionalized this division. In 1933, they issued identity cards, permanently and legally fixing every Rwandan's ethnicity as Hutu, Tutsi, or TWA. The fluidity was gone. A social distinction was now a rigid, inescapable racial category, passed down from father to child. This single act planted the seeds of division and resentment that would grow for decades. With the Belgian support, the Tutsi minority dominated positions of power in the colonial administration. The Hutu majority was largely excluded from education and leadership roles. This colonial policy of divide and rule created a deep sense of injustice and resentment among the Hutu population. As the winds of independence began to blow across Africa in the 1950s, these tensions exploded. Hutu leaders began to frame their struggle for power as a social revolution against an oppressive Tutsi aristocracy. They adopted the colonists' racial ideology, but inverted it, portraying the Tutsi as foreign invaders and the Hutu as the true, indigenous people of Rwanda. Violence erupted in 1959, in what became known as the Hutu Revolution. Thousands of Tutsi were killed, and more than 100,000 were forced into exile in neighboring countries like Uganda, Burundi, and Congo. When Rwanda gained independence from Belgium in 1962, it was under Hutu leadership. The country was now a republic, but the cycle of violence and ethnic hatred was far from over. For the next 3 decades, post-independence Rwanda was marked by cyclical violence and discrimination against the remaining Tutsi. They were systematically marginalized, treated as second-class citizens, and often became scapegoats for the country's political and economic problems. In exile, the Tutsi diaspora dreamed of returning home. In the late 1980s, a group of these exiles in Uganda formed the Rwandan Patriotic Front, or RPF, a rebel army. Their goal was to force the Hutu-led government, under President Juvenal Habyarimana, to allow their return and end the ethnic discrimination. In October 1990, the RPF invaded northern Rwanda, starting a brutal civil war. The conflict further inflamed ethnic hatred. The Habyarimana regime, along with hardline Hutu extremists, began to prepare for what they called the final solution. They stockpiled weapons, trained militias known as the Interahamwe, and used state-controlled radio, most infamously RTLM, to broadcast relentless propaganda, dehumanizing the Tutsi, calling them cockroaches that needed to be exterminated. The country was a powder keg, and the fuse was about to be lit. On the evening of April 6, 1994, the plane carrying President Habyarimana was shot down as it approached Kigali airport. He was killed, along with the president of Burundi. To this day, it's unclear who was responsible, but Hutu extremists immediately seized the opportunity. They blamed the RPF and used the assassination as the pretext to unleash their meticulously planned genocide. Within hours, roadblocks were set up across the capital. Presidential guards and the Interahamwe militia, armed with lists of names, began a systematic slaughter. They went from house to house, killing Tutsi men, women, and children, as well as moderate Hutu who opposed the plan. The radio incited ordinary citizens to join in, urging them to do their work and kill their neighbors. The primary weapon was the machete. Churches and schools, once places of sanctuary, became slaughterhouses where thousands seeking refuge were murdered in cold blood. For 100 days, from April to July 1994, the world watched in horror and largely failed to act. The United Nations peacekeeping force already in the country was small and its mandate was weak. Instead of being reinforced, it was tragically reduced after 10 Belgian peacekeepers were murdered. The international community debated whether the events even constituted genocide, a delay that cost countless lives. While diplomats talked, the killing continued with horrifying efficiency. Neighbors killed neighbors. Husbands killed their Tutsi wives. Priests and nuns participated in the murder of their own parishioners. The genocide was a low-tech affair, carried out face-to-face with brutal intimacy. The goal was not just to kill, but to utterly erase the Tutsi people from Rwanda. By the time the genocide was finally stopped by the advancing RPF army in July, nearly 1 million people were dead. The country was destroyed, its social fabric torn to shreds, and its fields littered with the dead. In the aftermath, Rwanda was a nation in ruins. Over 2 million Hutu, fearing reprisal, fled to neighboring countries, creating a massive refugee crisis. The new RPF-led government, headed by Paul Kagame, faced the impossible task of rebuilding a country from ashes. How could a nation move forward when killers and survivors had to live side by side? The path chosen was one of justice and reconciliation. The UN established the International Criminal Tribunal for Rwanda to prosecute the architects of the genocide. But for the hundreds of thousands of ordinary perpetrators, a different solution was needed. Rwanda revived a traditional justice system called Gacaca. These were community courts where villagers would gather to hear confessions and assign sentences, which often involved community service. It was an imperfect system, but it allowed for a measure of truth-telling and accountability at a local level. Simultaneously, the government embarked on a radical project of national unity. Ethnic identity cards were abolished. It became illegal to speak in terms of Hutu or Tutsi. The official narrative became, "We are all just Rwandan." Today, more than a quarter-century later, Rwanda has undergone a remarkable transformation. Kigali is one of the cleanest and safest cities in Africa. The economy has grown steadily, and advancements in healthcare and education are impressive. The nation has made a conscious choice to remember its past in order to build a new future. Memorials across the country stand as a solemn reminder of the genocide, ensuring that the victims are never forgotten. But the scars run deep. The trauma is passed down through generations, and true reconciliation is a slow, painful process that continues every single day in the villages and on the hillsides of Rwanda. The country's story serves as a powerful and haunting lesson for the world, a warning about the dangers of hate speech, the poison of divisive ideologies, and the catastrophic consequences of indifference. But it is also a story of hope, a testament to the strength of the human spirit to survive, to rebuild, and to find a path toward forgiveness and a shared future. Thank you for joining us on this journey through Rwanda's history. If this story moved you, please consider sharing it. Subscribe for more deep dives into our world's complex past.